The day she thought would be the happiest of her life became the moment that destroyed her completely. 30 minutes before she was meant to walk down the aisle, the man she loved looked her in the eyes and said softly, almost gently, "I don't want to marry you." Not because she stopped loving him, not because she did anything wrong, but because she could no longer walk. A silence fell, heavy, merciless. The music stopped. The whispers started. Humiliated, abandoned, broken in a white dress. Outside, the spring sky darkened. She wheeled herself into the empty garden, rose petals clinging to her dress like ghosts of a dream, and then a stranger stepped forward, a man with pain of his own. He didn't speak at first. He simply stayed. What he did next, no one expected. It would turn her deepest heartbreak into the beginning of everything. If you've ever been left when you needed love the most, stay with this story. Because sometimes, the person who saves you is a stranger who refuses to walk away. Aisha sat alone in the church garden. White petals lay scattered around her like fallen snow. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier. Her dress clung to her body, heavy, cold. Her hands trembled on the wheels of her chair. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Every breath came out in a broken gasp. The sound of laughter drifted faintly from the church hall. Guests whispering, unsure what to do, afraid to look. She stared at the ground, at the ring still shining on her finger. It mocked her now, a circle of promises already broken. The white roses bent under the rain. Her veil slipped from her hair and landed in the mud. She didn't pick it up. She couldn't. For a long moment, she just sat there, still, silent, small against the world that had turned its back. In that moment, she wished she could disappear. But pain had a sound, and it echoed through the garden. Aisha let out one sob, sharp, raw, and real. It was the only thing left that still belonged to her. His voice replayed in her mind again and again. "I don't want to marry you." The words wouldn't stop. They circled like a cruel melody she couldn't silence. She saw his face, calm, almost kind. He couldn't even cry when he said it. He only looked relieved. "I tried," he had told her. "I wanted to make peace with it, but I can't." He meant her wheelchair, her new body, her new life. In that bridal room, she had begged for air. The mirror behind him reflected a woman she no longer knew. Beautiful, broken, sitting still while her world burned. Every sound in the church had faded. All she heard now was the echo of that single line. Each repetition cut deeper, duller, slower, until it wasn't even his voice anymore. It was hers, whispering back in disbelief, as if saying it again might make it hurt less. But it never did. The rain grew louder, drumming on the empty benches. Aisha moved toward the gate, each turn of the wheel heavy. Her bouquet slid from her lap, petals scattering into puddles. She didn't stop. She couldn't. On the street beyond the churchyard, a car waited at the light. Black, sleek, silent. A Rolls-Royce. Inside sat Ethan Cross, watching through the glass. He saw a woman in a soaked white dress, head bowed, lips trembling, trying to move forward alone. Something in that image stopped him cold. It wasn't pity, it was recognition. The same kind of loneliness he'd lived with for years. He turned off the engine. Rain blurred the window until all he could see was the faint outline of her face. And the pain in it. The light turned green. Cars behind him honked, but Ethan didn't move. He opened his door, stepped out into the rain, and started walking toward her. She didn't hear him approach. Only when a shadow fell across her lap did she look up. A tall man stood there, holding an umbrella. Raindrops slid from his coat onto the ground between them. "Do you need help?" he asked quietly. Aisha shook her head. "No one can help me anymore." Her voice cracked. The words tasted like defeat. He didn't argue. He simply knelt beside her, still holding the umbrella over them both. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the rain. Up close, his eyes were calm, tired, kind. He didn't stare at her wheelchair. He looked at her the way people used to before everything changed. "I'm Ethan," he said at last. "I didn't mean to intrude." Aisha looked away, then whispered, "You're the first person who hasn't." And for the first time that day, she felt seen, not as a tragedy, but as a person. A small voice came from behind them. "Daddy, why is the princess crying?" Ethan turned. His daughter, Emma, stood in the rain with a pink raincoat and a lopsided ponytail. Her umbrella was half open, dripping water on her shoes. She looked at Aisha with wide, curious eyes. Aisha blinked, startled. She hadn't been called a princess in years. Her lips parted, but no words came. Ethan's face softened. "She's just having a hard day," he said quietly. Emma stepped closer, ignoring the rain. "Then she should come inside," she said. "My mommy used to say warm tea makes sad hearts better." Something inside Aisha cracked. Not in pain this time, in tenderness. She smiled through the tears she couldn't stop. "You have a very smart daughter," she said. Ethan nodded. "She gets it from her mother." The moment hung between them. Fragile, human. Rain kept falling, but it no longer felt cold. Ethan hesitated, then said softly, "Let us drive you home, or at least out of the rain." Aisha looked down at her soaked dress, her fingers curled around the fabric, unsure. "I'll be fine," she murmured. Her pride was louder than her pain. But Emma tugged at her sleeve. "Please, princess. Daddy makes good cocoa." The innocence in that voice disarmed her more than any kindness could. Aisha exhaled slowly. "Just until the rain stops," she said. Ethan nodded once, careful not to make it feel like rescue. He guided her chair toward the car, steady, respectful. The smell of rain and roses filled the air. When he opened the door for her, she caught her reflection in the dark glass. A bride, ruined and real, beside a stranger who had stopped when no one else did. For the first time all day, she didn't feel completely alone. The car ride was quiet. Outside, the storm softened. Inside, the hum of the heater filled the silence. Ethan's house stood tall and calm at the edge of Buckhead. Not cold, like she imagined a billionaire's home to be. Warm lights, soft colors, the faint smell of cinnamon. Emma ran ahead. "I'll make cocoa," she declared, disappearing into the kitchen. Aisha sat near the window, still in her wedding dress, watching raindrops trail down the glass. Her reflection looked ghostly, but alive. Ethan brought a towel, placed it beside her. He said nothing about the dress, the chair, or the day. Only, "Would you like tea instead?" She nodded, her throat too tight for words. As he poured, she noticed a framed photo on the shelf. A woman smiling beside him, holding a baby. A shadow crossed Ethan's face. Aisha didn't ask. She already knew what loss looked like. Steam curled between them as they sat with their cups. Neither wanted to be the first to speak. "My wife passed away 3 years ago," Ethan said quietly. He stared into the tea as if the story still burned. "Cancer. It was fast. She never got to say goodbye." Aisha lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry." He nodded, accepting the words without pity. "And you?" he asked gently. Aisha's hands tightened around the mug. "A car accident," she said. "I worked in a restaurant kitchen. A shelf fell on me. The doctor saved my life, but not all of it." Her voice trembled, but she didn't cry. Ethan didn't try to fix it. He simply listened. Really listened. The way people do when they understand pain too well. For the first time in months, Aisha felt safe speaking aloud. They sat in silence for a while, the rain easing into drizzle. Emma brought a plate of cookies, proud and smiling. "Thank you, sweetheart," Ethan said, brushing her hair back. When Emma ran off again, Aisha glanced toward the window. "The rain's stopping," she said softly. "Maybe that's a sign." Ethan followed her gaze. "Bad days don't last forever," he said. His tone was calm, certain, as if he'd learned it the hardest way. Aisha repeated the line under her breath, tasting the words. "Bad days don't last forever." It sounded almost possible. Ethan smiled faintly. "You'll see." She looked at him, really looked. Not the money, not the house, the man. And, for the first time since the church, she felt a quiet flicker of something she hadn't felt in months: hope. Morning light filtered through thin curtains. Aisha wheeled into her apartment. It was silent, painfully clean, painfully still. The wedding invitations lay scattered on the floor, some torn, some stained with yesterday's rain. A half-packed suitcase sat by the door. She had imagined leaving for a honeymoon, not for heartbreak. Her reflection in the mirror looked hollow. The makeup was gone, the sparkle too. The air smelled of flowers that were already wilting. She tried to breathe, but every corner of the room echoed the same thought. He left. She rolled forward, picking up a single envelope. Her name, written in gold, shimmered under the light. She tore it apart, slow, deliberate. The pieces fell to the floor like snow. That sound, paper tearing, was softer than a scream, but heavier than words. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Bad days don't last forever." But it didn't feel true yet. The phone buzzed on the counter. Aisha ignored it at first, expecting sympathy text she couldn't face, then curiosity won. One message. From a number she didn't know. "Just making sure you got home safe. EC." Her heart skipped. Ethan. She read it again, then again. There were no questions, no pity, only presence. For a moment she just stared at the screen. The words glowed faintly in the dark apartment, a small light in a long night. She typed, "Thank you," and deleted it. Typed, "I'm fine," and deleted that too. In the end, she sent nothing. But she didn't turn off the phone either. The message stayed open, softly reminding her that someone, somewhere, still cared enough to ask. By the weekend, the story had spread online. Photos from the wedding, the wheelchair, the empty aisle. Comments poured in. Cruel, careless, endless. She trapped him. Who would marry that? Poor thing, but he did the right thing. Each sentence stung worse than the last. Aisha scrolled until her fingers shook. Her name, her face, her pain, all turned into gossip. At the grocery store, people stared too long. Neighbors spoke in soft, pitying tones. Even silence became heavy with judgment. She shut the curtains. She stopped answering calls. The world outside had already decided who she was. Late that night, the phone buzzed again. She almost ignored it, until she saw his initials. EC. "Just wanted you to know," it read, "you didn't deserve any of this." She didn't reply, but this time she smiled through the tears. Days passed, then a week. Every morning at 8 o'clock, a message appeared. "Good morning, Aisha. No advice, no pressure, just a quiet rhythm." She began to expect it, a gentle routine in a world that had gone loud with judgment. Sometimes she replied with a single word, "Thanks." Sometimes she didn't at all. He never stopped. One evening, she asked, "Why do you keep writing?" A pause, then his answer, "Because consistency is another kind of care." That line stayed with her. She wrote it on a scrap of paper and pinned it to her fridge, the same fridge that once held their wedding menu draft. Now it held something better, proof that kindness could outlast pity. A week later, another message came. "There's an art event this Friday. Charity for accessibility programs. Emma's school helped organize it. Would you like to come?" Aisha read it twice. Her first instinct was no. Crowds, eyes, whispers. She wasn't ready. But then she thought of Emma, and of Ethan's quiet patience. They hadn't asked for her story. They'd simply stayed. She typed, "Maybe. I'll think about it." His reply came quick. No pressure, just an open door. All day, she stared at that line, an open door. It had been so long since one had been opened to her. On Friday evening, she dressed simply. Jeans, a soft scarf. Her hands trembled as she looked in the mirror. Then she whispered to herself, "Bad days don't last forever," and headed out the door. The gallery buzzed with voices and camera flashes. When Aisha entered, a hush rippled through the room. Heads turned. Some smiled politely, others whispered. Her hands gripped her wheels tighter. She could feel their eyes, not cruel, but curious. Every whisper sounded like judgment. Then, across the room, she saw him, Ethan, calm, confident, walking toward her. He didn't hesitate. He didn't lower his gaze. When he reached her, he simply smiled. "You made it," he said. Before she could respond, he reached for her hand. Under the bright gallery lights, their fingers intertwined. Conversations stopped. Cameras clicked. He didn't let go. He looked at her, not her wheelchair, and for a moment, the noise faded. Aisha lifted her chin. The heat in her chest wasn't shame this time. It was pride. For once, she wasn't being looked at. She was being seen. The next weekend, Aisha visited their home again. Emma had begged for another princess dinner. In the kitchen, laughter filled the air. Ethan chopped vegetables while Aisha stirred sauce from her chair. Emma sat on the counter, sprinkling cheese and singing off-key. It was messy, loud, imperfect, and it felt like life. Ethan looked over at Aisha, smiling. "You're a better cook than I am," he said. "Then you're lucky I'm here," she replied. The words surprised her. Light, teasing. For the first time in months, she heard her own laughter. It felt strange, then right. After dinner, Emma insisted on a picture. She climbed between them, arms around both, shouting, "Smile!" The flash went off, capturing something none of them said aloud. A beginning they didn't plan, but all quietly needed. 3 days later, it hit the headlines. From broken bride to billionaire secret flame. Aisha Brooks, love or strategy? Her face was everywhere again. Photos from the gallery, the dinner, even the smile she'd just found, all twisted into lies. She sat frozen, scrolling through the articles. Each line cut deeper. They called her desperate. Gold digger. Opportunist. The comments were worse. People she'd never met decided her worth. And, beneath it all, one question repeated. Who leaked the story? Her stomach turned when she saw Ethan's name mentioned. Sources close to the Cross family confirmed. She wanted to believe it wasn't him. But trust, once broken, never fully heals. Her phone buzzed. Ethan calling. She didn't answer. Aisha waited 2 days before replying. When she finally did, it was short. "Did you tell them?" Minutes passed. Then his reply came. "Course not. You know me better than that." But did she? Doubt whispered louder than reason. "I trusted someone once," she said aloud, "and it destroyed me." She packed a small bag, ignoring the phone's constant buzz. He called, left messages. "Please, Aisha, talk to me." She couldn't. The pain felt too familiar. The sting of betrayal, the echo of leaving before being left. When he showed up at her door that night, she didn't open it. His voice was soft, broken through the wood. "I'd never hurt you." But she stayed silent, and this time he walked away. Days turned to weeks. No calls, no messages. The silence was its own kind of punishment. Then, one morning, a delivery arrived. A small, white bouquet. Roses. No card, only a folded note. "For the day you smile again. E." She stared at it for a long time. Her throat tightened. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was waiting. Quietly. Gently. Every day after, the roses stayed on her table. She watered them, though they didn't need it. It gave her a reason to keep moving. Some nights she caught herself reading the note again, tracing each letter with her thumb. A silent promise between two people who had forgotten how to hope. Outside, winter began to fade, and with it, so did her anger. It happened on a gray Tuesday morning. Aisha's phone rang. An unknown number. When she answered, the voice on the other end was trembling. "Miss Brooks? This is Atlanta Children's Hospital. You're listed as an emergency contact for Emma Cross." Her heart stopped. She didn't remember Ethan ever adding her name, but he must have, long before things fell apart. She reached the hospital in less than an hour. The hallway smelled of antiseptic and fear. Through the glass, she saw Ethan, pale, exhausted, sitting outside a room. He looked up and froze. "Aisha." For a moment, neither spoke. She wanted to leave, but the sight of him, broken, desperate, rooted her in place. "She's having seizures," he whispered. "They're running tests." Aisha moved closer, touched his arm. "I'm here," she said softly. "You're not alone." For the first time in weeks, he exhaled. They stayed through the night. The monitors beeped steadily, counting Emma's breaths. Ethan sat by the bed, head in his hands. Aisha stayed beside him, silent. Sometimes silence says more than comfort ever could. He finally spoke. "She's been doing better for months. I thought we were past this." His voice cracked under the weight of guilt. Aisha reached for his hand. "You've done everything right," she said. "Sometimes life just happens." He looked at her, eyes red. "I missed you." Her breath caught, but she said nothing. The hours dragged on. Nurses came and went. Outside, the sky began to turn from black to gray. When Ethan's head dropped forward in exhaustion, Aisha pulled a blanket over his shoulders. Then she whispered to Emma, "Hang in there, sweetheart. Your dad needs you." The sun rose pale and slow. Aisha dozed in the chair until a small voice stirred her awake. "Daddy?" Ethan's head lifted. "Emma?" He rushed to her side, tears already forming. Emma blinked, confused but smiling. Her tiny hand reached toward Aisha. "You came back," she said. Aisha smiled through tears. "Of course I did." Emma squeezed her fingers. "Daddy," she whispered. "Can we keep her?" Both adults froze, then laughed. Quiet, shaky, full of relief. Ethan kissed his daughter's forehead. "She's not something to keep, sweetheart," he said. "She's someone to be grateful for." Emma nodded, already drifting back to sleep. Aisha wiped her eyes. "She's brave." Ethan looked at her. "Like someone else I know." The fear that had built between them began to fade, replaced by something warmer. Fragile, but real. When Emma was moved out of the ICU, Ethan and Aisha walked the quiet corridor together. He carried the weight of the night in his silence. Every so often he glanced at her. The calm strength, the gentleness that never asked for credit. He remembered the first time he saw her in the rain, how her eyes had been full of heartbreak, and how somehow, even then, she'd carried grace. That grace had found him too. As they stepped outside, he stopped. "I thought I knew what love was," he said softly, "but it wasn't this." Aisha frowned, unsure what he meant. He looked away, smiling at nothing. "This is quieter, truer. It feels like peace." She didn't respond, but her hand brushed his briefly. It was a small gesture, a spark that said everything words couldn't, and Ethan knew. He'd already fallen long before he dared to admit it. A week later, they met at the park near the hospital. Autumn leaves drifted down, catching the afternoon light. Aisha was the first to speak. "Emma's getting stronger," she said. Ethan nodded. "Because you were there." They walked, slowly, side by side. The silence between them was full, not empty. Finally, Ethan stopped. He turned to her. "You showed me what courage looks like," he said. "I thought I was strong, but I was only surviving. You live." Her breath trembled. "Ethan." "I didn't stop that day just to help," he continued. "I stayed because I couldn't walk away, and somewhere along the way I realized I don't want a life without you in it." For a long moment, neither moved. Then Aisha whispered, "You're serious?" He smiled. Completely. And there, beneath the falling leaves, their eyes met, and neither looked away. Aisha looked at him, eyes shimmering. Her throat tightened, words trembling between heartbreak and relief. "You stayed," she whispered. "When everyone else left, you stayed." Ethan's expression softened. "Where else would I go?" Tears spilled, but they weren't the same as before. They weren't from pain. They were from release. She had built walls, brick by brick, out of fear and shame. And with those 5 words, he quietly tore them down. She reached out, her hand shaking, and he took it like something sacred. For the first time, she didn't feel broken. She felt chosen. The air between them filled with the weight of what had been lost, and the beauty of what had survived. Aisha smiled through tears. "I used to think love was about someone saving me. Now I know. It's about someone staying." Ethan nodded, his voice low. Then let me keep staying. Spring came again, gentle and full of memory. Ethan parked outside Riverside Church, the same place where it all began. Aisha hesitated at the gate. The white garden was quiet, the roses in bloom again. I haven't been back since, she whispered. Ethan nodded. Then let's change what this place means. She wheeled forward slowly, the gravel crunching beneath her. Sunlight broke through the trees, just like that day. But this time there was no storm, no shame, no whispers, only peace. Ethan guided her toward the spot under the archway. This is where I first saw you, he said. I didn't know then that I was meeting my future. Aisha smiled, tears gathering. The pain that once haunted her now felt distant, smaller. Sometimes healing wasn't forgetting. It was returning, and realizing you're no longer the same person who got hurt. The garden shimmered with white roses. Ethan took a deep breath, then knelt beside her chair. No audience, no photographers, just them and the wind. A year ago, he began, I found you here, believing love had ended, but I think love was just waiting for the right beginning. Aisha's lips parted, trembling. Ethan. He opened a small velvet box. Inside, a simple gold ring. No diamonds, no show, only meaning. Will you marry me? He said softly. Not out of pity, not to fix anything, but because I can't imagine a single day without you. Her breath caught. Tears welled up, spilling freely. From behind a bush, a small giggle broke the silence. Emma stepped out, holding a tiny sign that read, Will you be my bonus, Mom? Aisha laughed through sobs. Yes, she said, her voice shaking. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger. The garden, once a place of heartbreak, became a place of beginning. 3 months later, the same church opened its doors again. No crowd, just close friends, family, and a quiet sense of grace. Aisha wore a simple white gown, soft fabric, no train. She wheeled herself down the aisle, steady and proud. No one walked beside her. She didn't need anyone to. Ethan waited at the altar, smiling, tears in his eyes. Emma stood beside him, scattering white petals, whispering, Go, Mommy, go. When Aisha reached him, Ethan knelt once more so they met eye to eye. I do, she said, before the pastor could even ask. Laughter rippled through the room. Ethan smiled. Then I guess I do too. They exchanged rings, hands trembling, and when they kissed, the applause filled the small chapel, not for perfection, but for perseverance. Outside, the bells rang softly, marking not an ending, but the start of forever. A year ago, she had sat in this garden, dressed in white, abandoned, believing life was over. Today, she rolled down the same path, a ring on her hand, a family waiting beside her. Proof that love doesn't rescue you. It rebuilds you. Ethan pushed her chair toward the sunlight. Emma skipped ahead, tossing petals into the air. Laughter replaced the echoes of heartbreak. Aisha looked up at the sky, whispering, Bad days don't last forever. And maybe that was the truth all along. That love isn't about grand gestures or fairy tales. It's about showing up, staying, and turning pain into something beautiful. If this story reminded you that real love stays, share it with someone who's forgotten that hope exists. Because somewhere out there, someone is sitting in their own garden, waiting for the rain to stop.